Welcome to the TREPX Podcast. TREP is short for entrepreneur. One of the most meaningful and rewarding, yet difficult challenges you can take on. The TREPX Podcast gives you actionable insights, real examples, and success X factors from experienced entrepreneurs as we are learning, living, and sharing in the exciting endeavor of entrepreneurship. Now here's your fellow entrepreneurial traveler and host, Mickey Deming.
Hello, welcome to the TREPX Podcast. This is Mickey Deming, and today we have our latest episode featuring a friend of mine, Ty Crandall, who is an expert in business finance, business credit, business funding, and we talk about some of the details of that today. It's something that doesn't come up too often on podcasts like this. I know it hasn't in this one in the past, but it's so important because what capital can do is give you a buffer to try new things, to hire people, and to just extend the runway for your business and allow you to think beyond tomorrow, to start to think big picture about what you're doing. And what Ty points out is that for a lot of people, funding and capital seems like something that's impossible to get, but it doesn't have to be. There are ways to figure it out, and there is money out there. But for a lot of people, they don't take the steps necessary to make themselves look legitimate, to provide the documentation necessary to be able to access capital, and they don't take the steps necessary to build their credit, which is very important. So in this interview, Ty talks through that. If you're not interested in business credit right now, there's plenty you can take away from this because we talk about the marketing that he has done to build his business credit suite, and it's very impressive. He walks through his content kind of philosophy, and it'll blow you away. So definitely stick around for that. I really enjoyed talking to Ty. He's an expert on marketing, business, entrepreneurship, and there's a ton to take away from this interview, so definitely take notes. You can see more about Ty and what he's up to at creditsuite.com, and he actually has some free stuff at creditsuite.com/EIN that you will definitely want to check out. So head to Credit Suite, check out what Ty's up to, and you can see this interview and our quick serves at trepxgroup.com/podcasts and see this interview and all the others. So thank you so much for being a part of this today. I'm very grateful for Ty. Please enjoy this interview with Ty Crandall. Hello, Ty. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Good, man. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, how's Florida today? Because we are now hitting that season here where it's just rain and cold and it's not that fun. So can you just paint a picture of what Florida's looking like today?
I'd love to, but I've learned this time of year to not answer that question to anybody up north. There's animosity towards me when I answer that question.
Actually, that's probably true. I would have gotten upset. So I appreciate you holding back. Anyway, we have so much to talk about today. I'm really excited to dig into all the stuff that you're an expert on with Credit Suite, with business financing. But first, that's such a complicated and broad topic that a lot of people can get confused on and get overwhelmed in. Just the topic of financing and credit, it's a bit scary and overwhelming. And I think a good place to start is I love the way you describe the challenge on your website. And it says, just in this sentence, tens of thousands of companies go out of business each year because they can't get money and credit for their business. I think that's a pretty significant problem. So can you talk a little bit, just at a broad level, how you guys are working to solve that big issue?
Sure. I mean, as we all know, the majority of entrepreneurs just don't make it in business. No matter what organization you look at the statistics, it's pretty telltale that that's the end. Is a lot of companies, unfortunately, don't make it. And, per SBA, the two largest reasons for that has to do with lack of capital. And the other one is just kind of mistakes or lack of knowledge from the actual management professionals. And I think as entrepreneurs, we can really relate to both of these because we kind of fly by the seat of our pants. We get into things often that we're uncomfortable with. We don't know what we're doing. We figure things out as we go. And to me, the two of these tie together because when you have a lot of capital, if you look at a company like Twitter, Twitter's lost, $1 billion, but they have the money to burn. They can afford to make tremendous amounts of mistakes, figure out what works in their model because they have that capital. But, the majority of us as small business owners, we don't have that luxury. So when we have a lack of capital, we can't afford to make a lot of mistakes and still keep our business afloat. So this is a challenge that we really wanted to tackle. And what we found was that, the majority of entrepreneurs that we ask, almost everybody we ask, where would you go if you need money, responds very, very quickly with my bank. But, the Department of Revenue last year reported that 98.2% of financing in the business space did not come from conventional banks. Less than 1.5% did. So what happens is there's a ton of money out there. It's just the problem is that most of us don't know where to go to get it. We think we're going to go to our banks. Banks focus on very conservative risk, so they're not really inclined to get into the highly risky space of business financing, and as a result, they're just not the ones responsible for the majority of financing. So this is the problem we really look to tackle, is helping entrepreneurs discover that, yes, there's plenty of money, even if you're a startup, even if you have credit issues or don't have collateral, you just have to know where to go to get the money, and that's really the role that we fulfill, is that we help bring the capital to them through every legitimate funding source, help them recognize where the money is that will work for them, even help them build their business credit and corporate credit profile to make them more lendable. So that's kind of how that's a long answer to a simple question.
No, that's great.
That's how we tackle that solution and be able to put capital in the hands of small business.
Yeah, I think the way you describe that is really, really powerful, and it makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to take this, derail the conversation, because I want to come back to some of the specifics. But because hearing you talk about that, I hear so much just kind of genuine passion and excitement just about this problem and about solving it and about helping entrepreneurs just have a better chance to succeed. So I want to get into all aspects of some of the way you've grown this and how you've done it. But first I want to talk about that passion. Like, how did this come to be? How did you get involved with business credit? And can you talk just like what is it that gets you fired up about it?
Well, I think, I'm a serial entrepreneur, like probably a lot of your listeners are. And, the first business I ever really owned on my own was a mortgage company. And I got in at the height of the mortgage industry, and I remember thinking, well, this is so easy to run a highly successful business, because at that time, the mortgage business was easy. And unfortunately, I stuck in there too long, and I was there for the collapse. And overnight, my business of getting home loans for consumers stopped. Banks stopped lending money. Their guidelines were changing so fast, we couldn't originate deals before the guidelines would change and the deals would no longer fit. So we went a really long period of time before we could do anything. And when it all circled back around, our revenue would literally cut by 90%. And there's just not a lot of companies that could withstand that, us included. So unfortunately, I was pushed into a position where I lost almost everything. I mean, as close to bankruptcy as you can get, paid a bankruptcy attorney, and before I pulled out and fought my way back, which is what I ended up doing, but I walked to the brink. And one big thing I learned is that, hey, look, none of us expect to fail, but there are so many circumstances that are outside of our control that can create a situation in a whirlwind where it is possible. And unfortunately for me, I destroyed my personal family's finances because I didn't know any better. I didn't understand that you could get money without a personal guarantee and without personally being liable for what took place in your business. So I learned a very hard lesson, and I moved forward still not knowing there was a better solution. And the next company I created was a credit improvement company because we wanted to be part of the solution when the economy shifted. And the result of that was that customers started asking us for business credit, didn't know anything about it, started digging in. And I was just shocked. I was just astonished to realize that you could build an entire credit profile and score that's linked to your EIN, that you could get business credit cards, Visas, MasterCards, store credit cards without personally guaranteeing them, without being personally liable. And I was even more shocked that there were no advocates for this out there. There were no companies. There were no individuals. Nobody was talking about this, is what I at that point realized was one of the most important things that all of us should be taught from the beginning point that we get in business. So, Mickey, I was brought up to not complain about a problem unless you're willing to produce a solution. And, that's what we did. I decided to stand on the highest mountain and scream to everybody that would listen that business credit exists, this is how you get it, here's the steps to do it. And it quickly turned into a business, and then, we realized that most people wanted business credit to get loans, so then we kind of incorporated capital, and, that's where we are now, just with the passion of making sure that anybody that wants to start and grow a business has access to the capital to do so.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, just hearing you talk, the passion really comes through, like, that you care about this, and that this is something, like, you love talking about it, and to hear, like, you went to the brink, you went to basically rock bottom, that's kind of fueling where all this comes from, I think makes a ton of sense. And so I want to talk more about, because one thing, I've followed you for a while, and you are a content producing machine. It's insane. So when people go and check out your site, it's just like a never-ending library of books and writing and videos and everything else. And so I want to get into some of the details of that and how you do it. But first, can you talk about, like, how much does it help, or how much is it fueled by your passion, how much you care about your subjects? I think that's important for entrepreneurs. Like, sometimes we force ourselves to create content. Do you feel like you're ever forcing yourself to create it, or does it just kind of flow out of, like, what you're genuinely passionate about talking about?
I work very well with virtual assistants. I've learned many years ago how to really work on your business, not in your business. And I'm blessed to have learned that and apply that to our business now, because so many entrepreneurs still struggle with that. The one thing that I've never been able to do is outsource content. That's just something that I found that you have to do yourself. So I've went through a lot of things, and I figured out a model that makes this very effective for anybody to do in a way that saves a lot of time. And I call this my MUM model, my multiple uses model. So how it works is that ultimately I do a live webinar every 2 weeks. And I go in, I figure out what topic it is, I research the topic, I put together all of the content on PowerPoint slides. I then send that to my virtual assistant, Sarah. Sarah then sends that back to me with the slides all prettied up with graphics. And she also sends back to me 2 other versions. She sends to me a Word document with all the contents of each slide on a different page. I then send that over to a voiceover person that does a professional voiceover. She also sends me a version that's basically in paragraph format, like one large article. Now that becomes one or multiple articles or one or multiple blog posts the same. It also is broken down into different emails, which they then put into our email autoresponder content. We then further break that down into social media posts that they put into a place like Hootsuite, where it goes into our social media automatically. On top of that, I then get the PowerPoint slide to her with the voiceover. She then makes it into a video. When I'm done with that webinar, it goes on YouTube. We also then make it into an MP4, which goes into iTunes, and then we take the video and make it into an automated webinar. So that 1 hour's worth of research, that I do, and then the hour's worth of a presentation now is articles, it's blog posts, it's email content, it's PowerPoint, it's social media content, it's a live video on YouTube, it was a live webinar, it's a podcast, it's an automated webinar, and I get all of that content from that 1 hour's worth of research putting together those PowerPoint slides.
That's incredible. Wow, I love that. I hope people were probably taking notes on that. And so because I think that's something people can actually learn from and say, I want to start doing that. What exactly team is required for you to accomplish that? Well,
we use a company called Upwork, and Upwork is where you can get virtual assistants. Mm-hmm. And we have a large team of American employees, but we also realize that there's a lot of tasks that we don't want to give to a $15, $20 plus an hour person. So Upwork is where we hire contractors that are international contractors for usually $2 to $5 an hour. They do everything from video work, audio work, voiceovers, graphic work, and just straight virtual assistants. So, you can get a virtual assistant for very little money, and what I've learned is, especially virtual assistants from the Philippines, if you give them clear-cut written instructions or video instructions, it might take them 1 or 2 times to get it right, but once they get it right, they are completely consistent, and they will consistently get it right. So that's one thing we do really well is tasks like this. We're very good at mapping out instructions, getting it to a virtual assistant, and this just allows us to do so much more with so much less. And you know, we've got probably, I think, 15 virtual assistants, and our total bill in a month is like $3,000. You know, so you can get help, and this works for your general small business owner because most of us are working on a shoestring budget. So to be able to bring somebody in with very little money and take a load of tasks off us that we would normally try to accomplish is great. And then it also permits us to do a lot more than we would usually do if we didn't have somebody like that we could work with.
Yeah, that's incredible. And just to be clear for the audience, I believe Upwork is the Elance Odesk merger, right? That's the new company that came together.
Yeah, that's correct. Which, you know, we used to use both, especially Odesk, but Upwork is the combination now of both of them.
Right. Okay. Cool. That's incredible. Just to think through what you can actually do with, you know, one webinar is pretty insane. And the other piece in that, though, I think is important is just the concept of educating and using that for marketing, because especially with you, like we said at the beginning, this is not a subject that people can really digest quickly or, you know, automatically. I don't know if I can trust these people who are talking to me about finance, stuff like that. How do I know if this works? And I think one way to get through that is through educating, through, you know, helping people for free and then inviting them to take action. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy in terms of educating and how that's worked for you in the marketing?
You know, we started this in the credit improvement business, and, you know, credit repair is a crazy thing because it's very, very effective. And when you really understand the consumer laws that regulate credit and you understand credit reporting and scoring, you understand how many manipulative things are done to people's credit reports with great intention to be able to lower their scores. So I was a big advocate for fixing this, and what we did worked really, really well. But I was still very stunned that when we would get prospects on the phone, they just flat out did not believe in what we did. They didn't believe it worked. And this was frustrating for us because not only did we have to sell ourselves and our company, but we had to sell the idea that what we were delivering even worked. And so it got so frustrating that I realized we just couldn't do this on a phone call. So I went out and I created this, you know, I don't know, 5 or 10 different emails that broke down how the FICO score worked, that explained the Fair Credit Reporting Act, that explained people's rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And what would happen was when the lead would come in, we would put them into this automated sequence of emails that they would get once a week or every 5 days that would educate them on why credit repair worked. And I was really astonished when months later the phone just started to ring and people would call and go, look, I get your emails, and now that's a term that we laugh at because when anybody calls us and says, I get your emails, they're about ready to buy. And that's what we've learned, you know, in many years since. But they would say, I get your emails, and I have a couple questions. We would answer the questions, and they would say, I'm ready to enroll. And this was astonishing for us because we used to go into these calls as a battle, and now there was no battle. And so we quickly realized that by educating them of what we did, by giving them the knowledge and them understanding the credit system, we were empowering them. We were building credibility. We were building trust. We were doing something nobody had ever done in their life, which is take the time to educate them on not just why our services work, but how the credit system worked and how their credit worked and what they could do to control it and all these things that anybody interested in fixing their credit would have. And so this became just the backbone of our business. And I've really carried that over now, and we do it in great, great, great length. We are very big on YouTube. We're very big on podcasting. We're very big on emails of just general education. If you want money, if you want business credit, here's how it goes. Here's how you get business credit. We'll map out the steps. Hey, if you want to hire us, great. But even if you don't, we want to make sure you know how to do it. And this kind of strategy of just teaching people how to do what we do, giving them the information, educating them, creates this rapport. It creates this trust. And what we've really realized, you know, recently is that we built a tribe. We now have a loyal following of people that will go to our events and are just so loyal to us because we are so adamant about giving out this free education. So that's always been our philosophy, and I call that FIT, the free information theory, where I have an acronym at
yeah, you do. I like
for everything, but I do that because we teach this to our client base. But I'm very big on this. You know, nowadays everybody wants to sell you, and the problem is that you can't sell somebody something if they're not ready to buy.
Right.
And, you know, Mickey, that's the problem, is so many people out there, there's a 3 stages to a buying cycle. Somebody's interested, somebody's researching, somebody's ready to buy. And we could look at this as a car perspective. You know, when you're interested in a car, you start noticing cars driving down the road. You start looking at car lots more frequently than you normally do. Then you go into the research where you start looking at gas mileage and safety features and that next step. Then you walk onto the car lot and you're ready for a test drive when you're ready to buy. Well, the problem is most advertisers and marketing are only looking for people that are ready to buy, and they completely neglect the 70% of people that are in the other 2 stages of being interested in researching. So we very aggressively go after those people. We don't necessarily look for people that are ready to buy. We look for people that are in a research or interest phase. We grab them then. We then educate them all the way through until they push into an action ready to buy stage. And then when they're in the action ready to buy stage, we are the only obvious choice. You know, they're not going to find somebody on Google. They're going to go to the people that have taught them everything they need to know to make the wise decision. And in doing so, like I said, we've really created an environment where we're the obvious choice, where we don't have to fight for that business. Our customers come to us and want to do business with us instead of us trying to convince them why they should.
Yeah, and then it's not only, you know, you get people calling who are already sold before you even talk to them, but you also don't waste time on the phone with people who aren't a fit, because they have a chance to go through the content, and that's a major impact as well. I think it's really important, and I think this applies to any business. It's like, how can you educate people? Because today there's so much information out there that I think buyers are really empowered. Like, they have the ability to go and dig and research, and so they're not interested in just calling all the options. They're going to do all the research they can before they make a decision. And so you want them, once they pick up the phone, to be like, you know, I've seen all your guys' stuff. I'm in. What do I got to do next? You know, that's the best case scenario. It sounds like that's
and it really does. It plays on your subconscious mind. I mean, I say, you know, there's only so many times I can say tie the credit guy, tie the credit guy, tie the credit guy. Before you need credit, I'll go to tie the credit guy. I mean, it just, you know, it becomes a subconscious link. And that's really what a lot of good, consistent education does, is you become synonymous with what they're looking for. So when they're thinking about what they're looking for, they think of you. And when you have that and you are that synonymous, then that's when you really make it easy for people to want to do business with you. And it's a very different approach from people that just hard sell, hard close. I think that approach might be effective, but you're not building a loyal following. You're not building a tribe. And for us, when you're building a tribe, that's what makes you successful, because these people will then turn around and scream your praises upon the highest mountain. And that's just what helps your company grow, and you reach really a tipping point.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. I really appreciate it. And for you guys, so getting back to just some of the specifics, we won't be able to dive too deep here, but I think we can have some key takeaways related to the capital and credit. And like you said at the beginning, the 2 things that cause businesses to fail, lack of capital and just, you know, lack of knowledge, mistakes, stuff that you went through and that every entrepreneur goes through when you're new and you just don't know what you don't know, and a trap can get set up. So for a listener right now who's kind of in that place and they're thinking, I know I'm making mistakes, I know there's stuff I haven't figured out yet, and I'm also nervous because what if I have a 90% drop in revenue, you know, or what if I all of a sudden realize like my cash flow is not supporting me? What are some steps that entrepreneurs can take just to get a better awareness and to take a step in the right direction in terms of making themselves more viable long term?
Well, I think the first thing that everybody needs to know is you do not want to wait in business until you need money to go get it. You know, in so many cases when we see people, they've already got too many inquiries, they've already maxed out their personal credit. They are desperate, and when you get desperate, it makes it very tough on consumer or business lending for people to want to lend you money. So you need to go get money before you need it, because the one thing that we can all be sure of in business is that there's so many unsure things that are going to happen to us, and we need to be prepared. So that's my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is that business credit is applicable to any business, even if you're just starting up. So one of the very first things you should do, no matter what your credit's like, no matter if you have cash flow or collateral, is to start building your business credit. Go in and make sure your business is set up credibly. So, have a business address, or use a virtual address with a place like Regis if you don't want a physical address. Get a real business phone number. It could be virtual number, but you don't want to use a home phone or a mobile phone. Get a fax number. Get your phone number listed in 411. Make sure that the name you put on your application is synonymous across the board, that it's everywhere on all of your documents. You just need to make sure that everything you put on an application reflects that you are a successful, credible business. Then take the steps to get your business credit report. You can go to our website, which is creditsuite.com/reports, or you can go to Dun & Bradstreet and Experian Direct. But get your reports, see if there's anything reported on there now, and if not, take the steps to start building some business credit. Go to companies like Uline and Quill and Lachlan & Associates and Reliable Office Supplies. These companies will give you credit even if you have none, and they report to the business reporting agency. So you could use these kind of accounts to really get money on net 30 terms to grow. Then you build a business credit profile and score. In about 90 days, you could start walking into Amazon and Dell and Apple. Most major retailers offer store credit cards. So you're able to get that kind of credit, in about 90 days. And then in about 120 days, you can then move up to start getting real cash credit. So, if you start now, you can get real usable vendor credit immediately, store credit in 90 days, cash credit in 4 months, sometimes less, and that will help give you the money you need to really fuel the business. So that's my best advice. Everybody should build business credit right away, because that gives them the money they need to start growing the business. And my other piece of advice would be just pay attention to what kind of money is out there. If you have cash flow, you're probably lendable. If you have collateral, you're probably lendable. If you have good credit, you're probably lendable now. There's financing that focuses just on one of those three strengths that can get you money. So just know those two things going in, that you have a choice, that money and credit is available if you make the decision to go after it.
Yeah, those are great tips, great advice. And one thing you touched on briefly that I want to follow up on, because I think it's just so important, is related to just setting up your business to be legitimate. Because I think a lot of what you're talking about, and even the first point of just like don't wait until you're desperate, has to do with just your mindset towards the business. Like, are you in survival mode, in go month by month mode, or are you in building this for the long term? And I think there's steps like you were talking about, like in building credit, in building your business as with a real address, with a real phone number, that kind of legitimizes you and makes you feel like I really am a business owner. Can you talk through that and just the mindset that relates to this, and what it can do for you to start to see yourself, even like you talked about, like being on your business, not in it, and building something for the long term?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the bottom line is when you go to apply for money, lenders have set requirements. Credit issuers have set requirements they're looking for to determine if they're going to lend you money or not. And banks won't tell you this. They're restricted from doing so. Okay, and that's one of the biggest frustrations that we talk to with bankers is, they'll deny a business for a very basic reason, like they didn't put incorporated in their full name and they can't directly locate that company. I mean, you can imagine spending a month getting together all your documents for an SBA loan and getting denied because, your company ABC, you put ABC on the application instead of ABC Inc. And literally, that is one of the biggest reasons people get denied. So you've got to make sure that you have a credible business, that you have continuity with your name across everything to make yourself easy to find. There's a lot of places you should go to get listed, like Yelp and the Better Business Bureau and anywhere else. Dun & Bradstreet has a service that you can get listed. So you want to try to get listed as many places as possible. You want to be easy to be seen. You want your application to reflect that you're credible. Like, you do not want your email address to be partydude2015 at Yahoo, right? Like,
oh, dang, I should change
I know,
mine.
you got to change yours. I just gave it out. Everybody's going to be sending emails now. But, I mean, literally, people, come in. It's very easy for us to use our business name at Gmail. Well, that's not a real professional email address. They're going to look at your website to make sure, does it look like something that you bought for $50 or tried to do yourself, or does it have some kind of professional appearance? Especially when you start applying for loans for the first time or building business credit, you're not giving them a history to go off of. So then they're really going to scrutinize, those aspects, those credibility points of your business, because they don't know you yet. You haven't proven yourself in the business lending or credit space. So they're really going to scrutinize you, especially at the beginning. And the more that you do that and then start obtaining credit and financing, the more credibility you have. You have a business credit report, you have a business credit score, you have accounts you paid as agreed. Then it's not as important, especially as it is in the beginning. But anybody that's going to look for money, that's going to look for credit, that's ever thinks that they're going to sell their business, these are things you have to do from the beginning to make sure that you're credible, so you can attract customers, keep loyal clients, repel your competitors, make sure that you're lendable for lenders, for credit issuers, and even though that you're a good candidate to eventually sell your business if that's what you got to do, or if that's what you want to do. So you need to do all those things from the very beginning.
Wow, this is great. This has been a lot. So much good takeaways. I think this has been a really enlightening episode, just in terms of the marketing stuff you've brought to the table. But also, I think this is something that, I know we haven't really talked about it on this podcast, and we've done 47 episodes. But it's really, really important. And so I can't thank you enough for all that you're sharing. And I hope people will dig in and kind of figure out, like, how do I build myself for the long term, make it legitimate, and don't wait until it's nearing disaster. So, Ty, this has been great. Can you share, where can people find out more? I'm sure after hearing this, people are going to say, how do I get more of this guy's content and all his awesome acronyms?
Well,
so where can we find out more?
Well, we've got a free guide that maps out the exact steps in detail to build business credit, so anybody can follow the steps and be able to build credit for their company. And that site is creditsuite.com. That's creditsuite, which is SUITE.com /EIN. That's the letters, just EIN. So creditsuite.com /EIN. They can grab a free guide that will give them the step-by-step of building business credit. And then we'll also send them more information, videos and webinars and email content on exactly how they can go about getting money, types of financing that are out there, more information on business credit, everything anybody would want to know to be able to obtain credit and financing for their business.
Beautiful. Ty, this has been great. Really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing. Enjoy sunny Florida.
I won't talk about that.
All right, have a great day. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the TREPX Podcast. For more episodes, interviews, and business growth tools, please visit trepxgroup.com.